I think this is a first of its kind. This is the largest diameter tunnel in the southern hemisphere to have ever been constructed.
This is a rare look inside the Westgate Tunnel project, which promises to end Western Melbourne's traffic woes.
So this tunnel is really providing that vital link that people need for the future.
At about 4 kilometres long, 2 tunnels will run 32 metres below the frequently gridlocked roads of Melbourne's western suburbs, home to about 1 million people.
This is one of the most complex projects that's ever been built in Australia. It's the biggest investment that's ever been made in the western side of Melbourne in infrastructure, and that comes with its challenges.
In addition to the tunnels, the Westgate Tunnel project includes several new bridges and overpasses as part of the network. The promise is that it'll take 9,000 trucks currently rat-running through the west off suburban streets and alleviate heavy traffic.
As our population continues to grow, it's really important to provide those vital transport connections. We've worked really hard over the past number of years to build up a consistent and steady construction pipeline.
But critics of the project say it was ill-conceived from the beginning and is running over budget and over time. The entire project was meant to be completed by last year. It is now projected to be finished by 2025 and expected to be $4.5 billion over budget. Taxpayers will be slugged $1.9 billion of that.
It's clear that we're now paying the cost of that work not being done properly when the project was being developed.
In the transport field, we like to see as much planning as possible, but it seems in this particular instance that the planning process was curtailed, very short, very accelerated. The government was looking to get on the front foot and to be getting projects up and running.
The delay and cost overrun of the project can largely be attributed to the discovery of toxic soil and a 2-year-long dispute of where to dispose of it. Peter Lelliott is the public servant in charge of the project.
Do you think that was handled the right way, given there was it caused such a delay on the project?
Sure. Look, in the end, the decisions were made to take a precautionary approach in a lot of consultation with the EPA over PFAS in the soil. The project made a decision with government support to take the safest possible path, and that was to build a world-class facility that the soil was treated at.
This is just one of a suite of new major projects being built in Melbourne. When Premier Daniel Andrews took office in 2014, there was just 2 projects being built that cost over $1 billion. Now there's 18. In total, $106 billion is being spent by the state on infrastructure.
It's difficult for me to criticise the level of investment, but I think the way the projects are chosen, even some of the big public transport projects as well, is there's such a lack of transparency and a lot of secrecy around how these projects are conceived.
The Westgate Tunnel project was announced in 2015 when an ambitious Daniel Andrews had taken office. He was eager to make his mark early in his tenure.
This is such an important project for our state's future.
Trucks carrying freight through the western suburbs to Melbourne's port had been an issue at the 2014 election, and the new government had a plan to fix it. Initially, it was looking to spend about $500 million.
The overall benefits of the Westgate Tunnel project will substantially take significant numbers of trucks off the local road network.
Daniel Andrews had also promised to kill the previous government's commitment to build a controversial major road network known as the East-West Link. Backing out of that contract cost taxpayers $1 billion.
As the new incoming Labor government some time ago now has come into power, they've responded by doing away, obviously, with the East-West Link project, and then proposing a different project that I believe mainly comes from Transurban.
Transurban is one of the biggest infrastructure contractors in Australia and owns Melbourne's most lucrative tollway, CityLink. It proposed to the incoming government an elaborate and expensive new road plan which included 2 tunnels, which would connect with its other major asset, CityLink.
It looks a little bit like the cart is before the horse. And Transurban seems to be leading the road planning for Victoria rather than the Victorian government leading the road planning and then working with its major important stakeholders like Transurban.
There was no public tender process, but Infrastructure Minister Jacinta Allan says it's not uncommon for public projects to be brought to government by private industry.
This project went through a process that governments have used on a number of different occasions and went through a rigorous assessment process as part of being assessed by the government.
That assessment was partly conducted by William McDougall, a transport planner who worked on the business case for the tunnel.
That was one of the reasons I was so concerned that the process of assessing it seemed to be so biased towards getting it up, because there was no open public tender process. It was a project that Transurban had brought to the government with a price tag attached to it of taxpayers' money.
William McDougall says issues with the project were clear, even in the early planning stages, and he believes the Westgate Tunnel will cause an increase in CBD traffic.
It's very clear that it will continue to push more road traffic into the CBD.
The state's Auditor-General noted in 2019 that the project's business case was not sufficiently comprehensive, which he said undermined its key purpose, which was to provide confidence that the right investment was being made. The state's Deputy Premier and Infrastructure Minister Jacinta Allan strongly rejects accusations that Transurban influenced its decision to go ahead with the tunnel.
Would Transurban have had any influence on any independent business cases that were conducted?
No.
There's Docklink Road.
The Parliamentary Budget Office estimates the Westgate Tunnel will generate $10.7 billion in toll revenue for Transurban by 2045.
What do you say to concerns that the Westgate Tunnel project is essentially a money spinner for a giant corporation that is Transurban?
Well, this is a project that's going to provide for an alternative to the Westgate Bridge, and this is something that has been talked about for decades and decades.
A spokesperson for Transurban said the project has followed a robust and transparent process set out by the state government that considered the broad impacts and value of the project. The government acknowledges there's been issues with the project, but given Melbourne is soon to be Australia's biggest city and the West is one of its biggest growth corridors, the tunnel and new roads are critical.
We also have to consider the cost of not investing, the cost of not building these projects, particularly when you consider the growing population of Victoria and Melbourne. Melbourne's projected to be a city bigger than Sydney by the end of the decade and a city the size of London by the late 2050s. So we have to make these investments now.